classes are how long, an hour class?
50 minutes, most of them. Some of them are like an hour, and I'm teaching constitutional law, and it starts at 8:30 and goes till 9:45, but that's very unusual. I've compressed them.
And what about the one exam also?
Yes,
Just one at the end of the semester?
yeah. I used to give a paper, but since becoming dean, it's been harder to do everything. I hope to go back to it, a midterm paper and the final exam. Some of the courses, a lot of the upper level courses, they have papers, seminar papers, things like that.
Do you still have a course in library legal research?
Oh, yes.
Do you?
Oh, yes, yeah.
That's very important. I didn't do very well on that one. But I think it's vital, absolutely. That's it. That's the guts of being an attorney. Where to find it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So you said something, well, a lot of things that, at the end, you're talking about the discrimination. Do you feel like things have gotten a lot better, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've gotten a lot better. For instance, I can buy a home in Tucson on the foothills. You know, it's, which I couldn't when I was going to law school. I couldn't swim anywhere in those days. Now I can. People want me to join the country clubs. They wouldn't invite me to a dog fight if I knew both dogs in those days. When I became governor, why, every country club in town, in Phoenix, the most expensive country clubs and most prestigious country clubs, called me in immediately. You know, they want you to be a member of our club. Well, that wasn't my goal in life, to be a member of a country club. That's the least of my worries, really. But the economic aspect has a lot to do with it. You know, the acceptability, acceptance of it. And once you know people, why, it changes. Hazel Daniels is black fellow. He and I were inseparable friends, close friends. The National Bar Meeting Convention was held in Phoenix 2 years ago, and I was their spokesman for that convention, because I knew him very well. We studied together, had very good goals, very good objectives, and a wonderful person. The situation has changed in Maricopa County considerably. I remember being in Maricopa County, which is Phoenix. I couldn't get a room in a motel, so I sent my wife in, this blonde gal, to get the room, and we went afterwards. So things have changed. It's a different world. And the idea is not to be bitter about it. Get away from bitterness, you know. It's accept it as a fact of life, and this is the world, and do something with it, and try to have people understand it. It isn't that simple, but and I think the other answer, I think, in the legal profession I was pursued was, I don't want people to love me. That's the least part of it. I want people to respect me. And with respect comes love, and comes the other factors with it. But you hear the old argument, you don't want your daughter to marry this man. Well, who's asking for that? How would you like to take him for dinner to your house? That isn't the answer. They don't want to be asked for dinner. They don't want to marry your daughter. They want to be respected as human beings. And through that respect comes what one wants, which a better life, a better world.
You said that when your mother had said, we're here at an asylum, what happened?
My father was a deep pearl diver in Baja California, tip of Lower California. Never went to school. And then he went to Santa Rosalia, another port where my mother was born, also in Baja California. My mother went to the 3rd grade, and there was a mining camp run by French people, French operation. And then my mother and my father in Santa Rosalia, they got married. And my mother taught my father how to read and write. So then they crossed the ocean, came into mainland Mexico. And my father ended up in Cananea, which is a mining town in Sonora. And he became a leader on the labor unions. They had a strike, went on strike, a very large and severe strike. And they lost the strike, and my father was arrested, incarcerated, and placed in prison in Hermosillo, state capital. So he got asylum. He got asylum to move into the United States, and now he and mother and all the rest of us kids came in the United States to live. And that's how it turned out that we ended up here, by that process.
And when he came in, what did your mom and dad do?
My mother was a midwife. She midwife and delivered most every Mexican-American youngster in the Douglas border area in that country, Agua Prieta. and I would help her deliver some of those kids. She would ask me to help her out, and they pay her with a tough for a time. They pay her with a sack of beans or lard or rice, whatever it was. That's her pay. But that's enough to take the rest of the kids going, with food. And it became handy because later on with my horses, I was able to, the horses going to foal, I'd roll up my sleeve and I knew how to do it, so I could make the delivery fairly well. So it's, the sad part about it is my mother never saw me do anything except being sworn in Superior Court judge. She came into the courtroom. I was being sworn in by Lee Garrett, who was then the presiding judge, and the bar sponsored the ceremony. And Mother and several of my brothers came in and sat in the back of the courtroom, and Lee Garrett was giving his little speech. And he said, Mrs. Castro, I regret that I'm not able to speak Spanish, and I'm sorry, you probably don't understand what I'm saying. Mother stood up and said, Judge, I don't understand a word you're saying, but I have a good idea you're saying nice things about my son. I can read your eyes, read your lips. I think you're saying good things about my son. And then she sat down, that was it. To me, that was great. I thought this, It's been a good experience, really, this process of moving and hustling and the struggle that goes with it. And it can't be done. Too many people use a minority status as a crutch. I've never bought that. They say it can't be done. And when they use that word can't, then I just sort of, it makes my hair stand on end. Then I said, now here's what I chime in. And that's why, Bill Matthews, we used to be the publisher of the Daily Star, an owner, called me in one day. He said, Raul, you are very critical of the Arizona educational system, and I don't understand it. You're part of this system. And look, you're done all right. I said, Mr. Matthews, I'm the exception to the rule. I go back to Douglas, where I grew up, and I wasn't the brightest kid in class. Far from it. A lot of people, a lot of potential. And I go back, and they're winos, they're drunks, have been in the penitentiary. And those people could have been saved with one kind word. They could have been brought into the mainstream. Nobody had the time to do it. So therefore, to me, it's been, when people tell me you can't, then I'm going to do it the other way. I think I can do it. And I didn't quit. I didn't give up. I thought this is a way to move on and try to do it. And it's very true. And people use it as an example. I said, no, it's not the case. It shouldn't be done. It's the fact that I just don't want to hear it can't be done. I live in Nogales now. It's a border town. If you go to Nogales, Spanish is a language. Nobody speaks English. 98% are Mexican Americans. Chief of police, the judges are both Hispanic, and county attorney and chief of police, everybody's Spanish. And unfortunately, because the youngsters graduating, their English is rather limited, and the Spanish is worse. It's a very hybrid Spanish. And they use that as a crutch, the discrimination. I said, look, don't give me that pitch. As I did in Stanford when I gave this lecture. They had the first 5 rows, had Mexican-American youngsters. And they were hostile towards me when I was dressed with the tie and the whole works. And at Stanford and Harvard had sort of a quota system back in the olden days, many years ago. And my dream was to go to Harvard or Yale, one of those things, but no way I could be admitted. My high school grades were fine, no problem there. And I started my little lecture, it was in Harvard, at Stanford. We spent some kids who would look at me with hostility and say, look, you don't understand our problems. You don't understand our problems. These are young kids sitting there, and et cetera. And talk to us in Chicano. I said, look, folks, don't tell me I don't understand your problem. They had given them biographical data before I started giving my speech. It shows former county attorney, former judge of Superior Court, former banker, had been a banker in Tucson, and the banks, and ambassador, and governor, the whole shebang. It sounded like I came out of a country club setting. So everyone assumed that I was one of the wealthy Mexicans. I said, fellow, now you're here in Stanford. You're able to make it. You're here. Good thing for you. You're able to live anywhere you want to. You have everything ever come out of you in the world. Why give me this pitch about discrimination? You don't have it. You know what it's all about. Go ahead and do it. Don't use your background as a crutch. So it would take me 20 minutes of my time to try to rectify it and explain to them that it wasn't the answer. And I was going to the opposite. You know, they get a lot of benefits nobody would get ordinarily. And I got the same thing in Harvard. The kids line up there. You're not one of us. You know, because I'm wearing a coat and a tie. I'm not one of us. But things are getting a little worse, you know. And I understand that 50% of your enrollment in law school now is women, approximately. Medical school the same way. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not the sciences, not the hard sciences still, but the professional schools have changed dramatically since it's been about probably the 70s when the enrollments of women went up. In law teaching, there were very few when I went to law school. And in law administration, there were, out of the 180 law schools,
Yeah.
there's only 22 women deans.
You know, I always felt as a youngster coming up that the best students are always women. In elementary grade, you know, in border towns, you get classified. Now, once I got in class, they put me in to have a sixth grade, 6A, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And 6A, 4 is the kids that don't speak English very well. So it's supposed to be special education, the dummies or, you know, dysfunctional kids going to 4. So it took me a while to go from 4 to 1, I think to 1 eventually. But even when I got the 1s, the best students were always the girls. But in those days, a girl had to be home by 8 o'clock at night, then pooping around the streets. And the boys would go out and not do their homework. So therefore, the girls were always better prepared and were better students. It always has been. And law school being no exception, really. Up in law school, say the one girl, and later, I think when I time I graduated law school, must have been 3 girls. Virginia Hash out of Phoenix was one of them. Farrell Erding Gray out of Douglas is another girl that came in. And Beverly Harris was the 4th girl, I believe. But they're all good students and did very well. And so why, I don't know, but it's, and yet the professions were not willing to accept them. And the pay scale was always less here at the university when I was teaching. If you're a woman, it's wonderful to get a husband and wife to teach. You pay the husband a higher salary and the wife peanuts, because in both sides they're able to survive and make a living. So, you know, and that existed, and I felt that it was terrible. And so these are the inequities that I could see coming. And that's why I became a labor agitator in my younger days. Hard to believe, you not being from here would not understand it. Worked in the smelter in Douglas during the summer to pay my tuition, and I'd be working in a job. My pay scale was $2.40 an hour. If you're Anglo-Saxon type, you can get $4.40 an hour. Close together, and so I would ask the foreman, why the differential? Why the pay scale? Raul, you're a Mexican, you have a Mexican name, as long as that exists, that's what you're going to be paid. And that's where the labor unions came in. So then it fell in the name of McGuire was superintendent in Douglas, it's another. And they were building a power plant. And the foreman looked at me and he said, Castro, because I already was in college, so summer school. I want you to get 10 men and pick up an I-beam and move it over there. And the I-beam was from here to heaven knows what. Steel, heavy. Stu Carpenter was his name. I said, Stu, let me tell you, we have a gang that has equipment, machinery to pick up the heavy stuff. There's no one 10 men can pick up that I-beam without being injured. And we had to get on the crew and use the equipment we have. He looked at me, he says, that's the trouble with you Mexican kids. You get a little education and you get out of hand. You're fired. So I started walking out the smelter to get my card. So I was leaving, the superintendent was coming in. I was in high school with his son and his daughter. And he said, where are you going, Rose? I'm going home. I just got fired. Who fired you? Stu Carpenter. Why? And I told him. He just came from Africa. He's used to leading the slaves. Ignore him, forget him. I'm going to get you another job. Go somewhere else. I got me another job, and I finished the summer. And that's the wage differential. Out of that experience, I started organizing a labor union. I'd give speeches on the street for people to get organized and settled. And the Mine Mill Smelter Workers of America, funny that it was organized. And they go to those weight scale, and funny worked out. And but you have to do it. That's the only way you can do it. But I never believed in breaking windows or burning buildings. That wasn't the answer to it. I thought you become part of the administration, and then you have an influence. Did in the YMCA, and like I say, I was captain of the football team, and we had a little meeting with the football team, and let's go swimming. So everybody goes swimming at the YMCA, decided to go in, the door closed. Fellow pushed the button, closed the door on me. He says, Castro, you can't go in. Why not? These are all kids, high school kids. You only swim on Saturday. Mexican kids can only swim on Saturday afternoon. They use the pool during the week. You clean it up in the morning, Saturday morning, when the dirty, the filth, etc. That's when Mexican kids could swim. I thought, now look at the sign, Young Men's Christian Association. What's Christian about it? Yeah. So that inspired me to try to be a member of the board of the YMCA one of these days. I came to Tucson, law school. What do? I single, spent every day at the YMCA teaching kids how to swim, play basketball, and how to box. A member died in the board of directors of the YMCA, and somebody said Loper, this fellow Loper that I mentioned, wanted to run for governor. He said, there's a kid comes here every day, he works with kids, he's fine. Why don't we put him on the board? That's how I got on the board. Got on the YMCA board, and then I set policy. And I wanted to get a Mexican priest to talk to my kids. All the kids were from South Tucson, Chinese, black, Mexican kids. I asked a Catholic priest to come and talk to my kids. Monsignor Hughes lived in the foothills. Says, Raul, I can't do it. Why not? It's a YMCA. I said, Monsignor, what's it got to do with it coming and encouraging my kids and youngsters to do something? Well, you know, I'm a Catholic priest, and the Catholic Church and the YMCA are not in the same tune. The YMCA tries to teach the kids to be less Catholic than what they are. I said, that's not true. So that inspired me to do something else, to try to get the Council of Churches and the Mormons and the Catholics to join the Council of Churches. And it worked. Finally got the Council of Churches, to bring in the Catholic Church and the Mormons to be part of it. So I always felt that by being part of the establishment, part of the managing team, I could do something rather than being out of it. And it's worked, really, in that sense. Well, one of these days you must go to Nogales.
I would love to.
You'll enjoy it there. It's another world. It's a third world.
Down there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Can I
you
ask you
very
a quick
much.
question about your house on River Road? Is it the one with the blue shutters?
Blue shutters, and I shed tears when I go there, really.
Yeah,
Because that's where the kids were born, that's where we had horses and teamed up, and the only hobby I have is horses. You know, working with horses, and I'm a horseman in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought that property, and we built it.
What year was that?
Pardon?
What year was that you bought
I
it?
bought that property in the year got married, 1954, 55. I used to raise alfalfa. I feed the horses. It was a show. People would bring the children on Sundays, park the car, look at all the animals, etc. It's a beautiful place, beautiful home.
Yeah.
And then we sold it because I went to Argentina and everywhere else. And now it's a mess. The fence is down, the weeds are up.
Do you know the people, the family that lived just west of you?
West of me used to be Jess Richmond used to have horse shows farther down, and then the youth Vision Quest I think bought it.
That's it, right? Yeah, yeah.
Vision Quest bought that property, and somebody next to me had a tobacco shop, and they also everybody had horses in those days there. So it was interesting. It's
It's pretty land. It's a
It's
very
beautiful.
beautiful part of town. Wow.
here in Tucson. Nogales is still an hour away from it, and that's it. It's a good community in every sense of the word, really. I think people are better understanding. It's a little better community, better assimilated in that sense. And, I like it very much. Maricopa County is a different county, very difficult. I'll tell you what's happening now. I'm not from here, but I have seen the changes. A lot of foreign people are moving into Arizona, from England, from Germany, from all over the world, speak different languages. Arizonans are not used to hearing different languages, and they don't like it because they think they speak English well. If you're in the elevator, who cares what they speak? But they feel shorthanded because they don't understand what they're speaking or what have you. And they begrudge those people being in the country. You know, it's a very zealous kind of state in that sense. And the only people who were accepted were the Indians, the Mexicans, and the people that moved in later. The Indians were here, and the Mexicans were here when Columbus discovered America, to speak of. So that's part of the scenario, as long as you keep your place, you know. And it's, but it's a lot of changes here in that sense of the word. What's your home state?
I grew up in Wisconsin,
No kidding, what part of Wisconsin?
north of Milwaukee, a little town called Cedarburg.
My wife was born in Wauwatosa.
Oh, sure.
Went to school, the Whole Angels Academy, a Catholic school there. And then the rest of the parents were in East Troy. And I used to Oconomowoc. We used to go down in that area.
My brother is a doctor up in Oconomowoc now. My sister's
But
in Manitowoc. My mother is German, and my father's Italian. So
My
October
wife,
indeed.
my wife's father was German, Steiner. And her mother was Irish, Murphy. And I tell her, I said, look, you may be Irish, German. I don't see any of the Irish in you whatsoever. I see the German rather heavily. You know, the way you give the commands, it's all German.
Yeah, I say I'm an Italian trapped in a German body. It's not a happy combination.
It's rather fascinating about Milwaukee in that sense of the word. The third word is heavily Italian. The third word in Milwaukee. You know, it's just. And the fellow I tell you married the Polish girl, his name was Fischertello. But he changed his name from Fischertello to Fisher.
Well, Cedarburg, there were no Italians. My father married my mother, and my grandfather wouldn't speak to him, and it was extremely. It wasn't done. Everyone was German, some Polish, and Scandinavian. That was it. I said it looked like a horror film where you go to visit these little towns in Wisconsin, and everyone is as blonde and blue-eyed. They look the same. Looks like they made them in a machine in a factory of some kind. So my dad was definitely the cultural other in that town, and so it's interesting. It's kind of still that way. So
I had an Irish county district attorney in Milwaukee for 30 years. I can't think of his name, but he was Irish, because I met him afterwards when I was county attorney. We'd have these conventions. And I asked him one day, I said, how do you get elected in Milwaukee? Heavily German, heavily Italian, and you're Irish, and everybody hates everybody else, you know, the Irish and the Germans, and everybody's fighting. How do you get elected? He said, well, they all hate each other, so they vote for the least, me, being Irish. That's how I got elected.
I didn't even know there was an Italian community in Milwaukee. Because it was as though we grew up in this town. We never went to Milwaukee hardly, and there was.
You know, Claire is right in that area.
Yeah.
I used to fight in Milwaukee, and in those days, you never heard of a Mexican Milwaukee. There wasn't any. Now it's a takeover practically. I remember walking to a courtroom one day and watching a trial, and somebody who spoke Spanish came in with the defendant, and there was no there to interpret. So the judge looked up in the courtroom, anybody here speak Spanish? So I got up and became the interpreter. I said, Milwaukee. Small world.
Yes, yeah.
How did you fare out in law school as a woman?
It was by then, well, it was about 40% of the class. I went to William and Mary, and so it was fine. It was, I think what you're saying, first of all, there were a lot more of us, but also law school was different than some other things that you might have done, and so it was good. And I had a good experience. I did notice, though, we would make jokes because all around, every single portrait in William and Mary was of a white male, old white male, and they would still say, it's a reasonable man standard because no one's ever met a reasonable woman. And there was also, they'd say, what's the difference between garbage and a woman going to law school? The garbage gets taken out more often. But it's
You got in trouble in the firm though, didn't you?
The
firm, when you got out.
The firm, that was a whole nother story. But I think, like you do, I think the most important thing is respect. And you do your job, and you try not to think about it. And they thought the first editor-in-chief of the Law Review because for years and years, the woman who was the best academically on the Law Review would get the job of being the head of student articles. And the editor-in-chief said to me in the hallway, I had no intention of running for editor-in-chief because I couldn't afford it. I was going to teach legal writing. And he said to me, well, so you're going to run for student articles editor. And it just made me so angry. I said, no, I'm going to run for editor-in-chief. And he said, you are? I said, yes. Well, are you also going to run for the other position? I said, no. I want editor-in-chief or I'm not interested in anything else. And so I ran for it and got it. And now it's not a big deal. But then they found out that the very first, they thought I was the first, the very first woman who was editor-in-chief, her name was John. And so no one ever knew in the records that woman had done it. She did it in 1957. So, you know, you had to try. And here too, it was not a big deal.
Right.
I'm the first woman dean, but the faculty, it really wasn't a big deal. And the alums have been very good too.
Oh, you're the first dean, you're
First
the
woman.
first dean that's a woman.
First woman, And
Well, that's first.
yes, and now it's
That's
done.
good.
So it's been, everyone's been very receptive. I haven't felt it's been a problem,
No.
but we'll see. You just have to do your job, see what happens.
How many members of the faculty do you have now? 6?
27,
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're doing all right. So.
I'm glad to see that, really. That's wonderful.
Things change
Yeah.
slowly.
They
but
do change, slowly, but they change, really.
I tell my class that all the time.
Good.
Yeah. Well, this is terrific.
Here's the